to Gear Addicts episode 4. I'm super jazzed to have everybody here. I'm super jazzed to have Sir Mix-a-Lot as our guest. We've been, trying to do this for a long time. It's been quite a gap since the last episode. As you all know, Ryan quit. It was kind of a big deal.
Why did you even work with that dude in the first place?
He's kind of a douche.
Yeah.
He's kind of a douche. But,
Yeah.
he's here, actually. He's here. And
I'm a what?
And apparently everyone loves the furry dude.
Yeah, you're kind of
Hey, how's it going?
So if it's not news to you, Ryan is coming back to the show.
But if you watched the last one, I was there too, so you would have never known.
Yeah, there's
the
really no
difference.
gap. It was kind of this funny internet thing. Ryan and I were having this conversation, like, I don't really want to do this show like every month. It's a lot of work, and I've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm really busy.
I'd rather sleep.
And I was like, okay, then don't.
Yeah.
And that was the whole breakup.
And he cried.
I cried. It was really bad.
I cried too.
But on the internet, it became this really big thing, and people were like sending me private messages like, what the fuck did he do? And people were sending him messages like, he's a dick. And
which is hilarious, because the whole time we were messaging each other like, dude, did you see what this guy said? Like,
yeah, the Gear Addicts page on Facebook was hilarious. People were going crazy about it. But, it really did come down to, we were trying to do the show way too fast to do a really good episode each month. So we're going to kind of slow it down and do the episode like every, quarter or so, and do more between episode content. One of the things, which mic is that doing that? Yeah. Paul is, now involved with the show too, and Paul is it's probably because we're standing in front of speakers like dumbasses.
We're not very smart.
Yeah, Paul is super gear nerd, just like me and Ryan. And also, why don't we just sit here and then we won't cause problems? That's awesome. Yeah. So
let's do that.
Paul, comes from Valve, and he's got a lot of game experience. He's got a lot of audio experience. He's a super guitar nerd, just like me. He's got this really weird alien Strandberg guitar that I don't love that much, but he totally digs it.
Totally love it.
it's a sweet guitar.
Yeah. You haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
I have not. I have played one at NAMM, but
It weighs like an ounce, and that's kind of weird.
It's crazy technology.
But anyways, that's the whole story with the show. We're all caught back up now. Everything's good, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about this stuff. I want to get to the actual show, which is Sir Mix-a-Lot. And Sir Mix-a-Lot, I reached out to him on Twitter. He was super cool in responding back to me. And when I told him what we were doing the show, he was really into it because he might be a bigger gear nerd than me. He's totally into just talking shit about producing and talking shit about music, and that's super fun for me. And I thought it'd be super fun for the audience to get a new perspective, because a lot of times we kind of geek out on the metal thing, and music isn't all about metal. And
it's not.
It's not. No, it's not. It really isn't.
Okay.
That might be another little thing about why we broke up, but that's a whole nother story.
He likes Coldplay. I don't. I'm sorry. Anyway.
So, let's get to the fun part of the show and talk to Mix. But, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with the show, that this is really, a chance that we take to, interact with the audience and try and teach something as well as learn something and get a little back. So if you have questions or you want to know something in particular, hit Ryan up while we're kind of talking, and he'll gather questions. At the end of the show, we're going to have a panel, and, it'll really be a good chance to hear people's perspective on how they do things and why they do things.
Yeah, and it seems
awesome.
like the show's moving forward is going to be really exciting. We've got a lot of stuff planned, and we think it'll be really cool moving forward here.
For sure. Yeah, the next episode, Paul's got everybody interested at Valve talking about how they produce game music and sound effects and things. And I got to visit the studio. Very cool.
I can't wait.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, never been there.
Okay, so let's talk to Sir Mix-a-Lot, guys.
All right.
Awesome.
We'll be back.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Welcome.
Thanks for the 58 instead of that fucking CB microphone you got over there.
Breaker.
10 Roger.
You guys missed the total making fun of microphones conversation, and Mix had to have a 58.
Yeah.
So tell us what you've been up to. You've kind of been doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I stay busy, man. I started a little tech company. We're gonna do some human interface devices for cats that are doing music in the box, but to put their hands on it. Right now, you got a bunch of little tweaky little MIDI boxes with a bunch of unmarked knobs. And I have a couple of them. One of them with 32 knobs. It's the shit. And I can't remember what I mapped after knob 6. So I'm doing something that gives you more visual feedback and more tactile feedback. So it'll be some deep shit.
That's actually a really important thing, because I had one of the Tascam DM3200s for a while, and it had the control surface capability, which was awesome, but there was no scribble strips.
Right.
So
If you
it
can't
became
see what's going on.
Looking at a little screen like this big, trying to, what's on.
Well, some of them come up on your computer monitor, right? Yeah, it's not
Which
good.
is
It's cool for like attack, decay, sustain, release ×4. Right? That's cool. But after that, you can't, and especially with EDM music, what I noticed was I was watching cats like Skrillex, and although he had a cigarette and he looked cool and the avatar was moving, basically he was just, ew. And that was it. There was no, so this year we're gonna have like reels, things you can actually, like shit on your jacket you can trigger, and to make EDM more fun to watch. Like maybe you'll have an EDM band one day.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Instead of one guy and a laptop.
There's
right?
all kinds of way I can make fun of that, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah, he's thinking erectile dysfunction. Metal guy.
Metal guy. You've been branching out. You're not just in hip hop these days.
No, I never have been, man. I listen to all kinds of music. Like my iPhone is sometimes embarrassing when you see the shit I have, but I listen to everything. And I'm producing a rock band right now. I'm producing my own stuff. Then I'm producing Out of Sight, who's like the bastard child of all music, because he takes everything. I mean, everything from vintage rock to EDM to hip hop, and we make gumbo with his music. So
Can dig it.
Yeah.
So where can we find some of that stuff? It's all on your
Out of
site?
Some Out of Sight stuff is up right now.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones and The Way, which is a group I'm producing now, they're doing a lot of live stuff, so they weren't hip to recording. So we get in the studio and they would do takes, and then listen to the take and they go, I played it wrong. And I was like, why the fuck does he keep, it sounds perfect. But I realized now what he was doing was he was hearing an unmixed track. So he thought that he was fucking up. So I just like, okay, so I had to take control, grab the bull by the horns and go, play this and go home. And so that's been an experience. And then like doing my own shit is always hard, because when you do your own stuff, you're too close to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have to call somebody like this guy and he can tell you how fucked up it is. We're not gonna say the artist's name, but I sent him this one track and I'm like, this dude's pretty cool. And he sends me back, this shit sucks.
Oh, is that the one you sent me?
So that didn't work out too well. Don't say the name
Somebody
again. He's a friend of mine.
It's interesting though, because like he'll send me these, and I never did this. I didn't know anybody did this for you. He'll like take his iPhone and video like 30 seconds of some shit that he's working on, and he's just laughing in the background and send it to me. Like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, man, I get excited in the studio, man. I'm serious. Well, no, it ain't better than sex. That's a lie. But I love the studio, man. I geek out when I'm in there. I'm serious, but I don't love it in the traditional sense. Like some guys, the songs have to be true and have to be recorded a certain way. I don't believe in that shit. I like doing things unorthodox. I'll try weird shit. To me, especially with all these DAWs out, to me, if you don't use those tools, if you use Pro Tools as a giant tape machine, you're actually wasting time. I mean, there's so many things you can do within that box that you can't fuck with on tape. And there's so many things you can do on tape you can't do in Pro Tools.
So I don't want to fast forward into our engineering segment, but based on
don't
that,
get me started.
What did you think of Sound City? I'm curious, because it was we love analog and we hate digital. I'm curious what your take on that was.
I hear that shit so much, man. It's like a bunch of fucking dinosaurs hanging around talking about the good old days. And it's like, it's frustrating because analog is valuable beyond belief, but to just say no digital, come on, man, that's impossible. Everybody I know that says all analog, they have a giant Pro Tools system, right? I went in Prince's Paisley Park one time, and he was like, all we do is tape here. It's the Prince way.
We don't believe in the internet.
Yeah, we don't believe in the internet. It's just a fad. I want all my songs down. And lo and behold, behind this smoked glass was about 50 fucking interfaces. He had tools in each room, and he was recording the tape, going into tools, editing, and spitting back out the tape.
He probably doesn't know. He thinks it's all analog. There's a whole bunch of...
Right, yeah. Yeah, that 192 says analog on the back. Analog input must be analog.
Well, he's too short to see the.
But the cat is creative as hell, but just not quite in the mix right now.
I shouldn't make.
I shouldn't
short
talk shit because I'm a big Prince fan.
Yeah.
So.
I am too, but he's short.
I didn't like the shoes, but I liked the music.
And I don't get the whole name thing. But. So
I do. It was legal, trust me. I was on Warner Brothers. Them motherfuckers are slave drivers, bro. He couldn't even own his name, so he was squiggly sign. You know, that was it.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Had to do it.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you did.
I didn't know why. I just thought he was weird.
Oh, okay.
Nah. Trust me. Once the contract was over, he went back to Prince.
Yep.
So the Aaron Jones thing, you've been doing a lot with those guys. How'd you get into that?
I had a buddy of mine named Scott. They played here, actually. And Scott came by, and I didn't get to see it. He just brought audio of this show. And I was like, damn, they sound pretty cool. It was like Stevie Ray Vaughan meets Nirvana, right? So then I go and see him at the Tractor Tavern, right? And I'm standing outside and I hear him, and I'm thinking, it's got to be like some 50-year-old fat white dudes. That's what I'm thinking. Because of the way it sounds. I mean that like cool. I'm like, shit, this is some old fuckers that are getting down. And I walk in, and the oldest guy was like 25. And they were all three of them were black. And at 20, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I just fell in love with it, man. Not because they were black, but it was just ironic that they were that young. Yeah. And he had an SRV hat on. Yeah. You know, I'm like, and it wasn't gimmicky. I mean, this cat will give you the history of Hendrix and Stevie Ray and all these guys.
He's a hell of a guitar player, too.
Yeah, he's a great guitar player, and he's still learning. Mm-hmm. You see that guy at 35, he's going to be a monster.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, now that you've moved into this big producer role, is like, what attracts you to these artists?
You know, it's funny, because, well, we're going to talk about this later about certain, yeah, I don't want to blow my wad early. That's what I tell her, at least. But he told me to say that, actually, so. But really, I gotta like what I record, because you don't get paid shit to do this, right? So I pick an artist I like, and that's what I work with. I don't want to work with an artist that sucks, honestly. Even if they think they're great. Some of them are great, I wouldn't record, because I'm not interested in what they're doing musically. It doesn't mean they suck to everybody. Just to me, I just don't dig it.
We were talking about that. We had dinner and we were chatting about just different mix things. And one of the comments I made is, when you push the faders up, if you're not, into the song, you shouldn't mix it.
Exactly. And I mean, I feel sorry, because I know I work with a lot of engineers that are like, what the fuck is this rap shit? But they toughed it out. And I always said, I'll never do that. I'll never record something I hate, because I don't get paid to engineer tracks. I engineer tracks to get paid. Right? So I engineer tracks, I put them out and hope that they get traction. So let's face it, 90% of the shit you put out is going to fail. So you have to at least love it. And when you lose that passion, you shouldn't even do music anymore. And I don't want to lose that passion, so I got to love what I do.
So that's a really good segue into something else I wanted to ask you about, because we kind of talked about this too. For musicians, I know there are a lot of musicians in the audience that are trying to build something. Everything's changed from when you got started, and that was the way. Now there is no way. What advice do you have? What recommendations would you give?
It's funny. I get that a lot from like young cats. Mix, what should I do? Don't ask Mix what you should do, because I'm not the business model today, right? Okay. You look at cats like Macklemore, there are no rules anymore. I mean, Macklemore walks into Warner Brothers and they think, oh, you're here to get signed? No, I'm here to sign you. I need you guys to promote my music. That's the shit. And that's today's model, whereas in my era, you went to a studio. Even if your shit was great, they wouldn't accept it. You had to go to a studio. Yeah. And you delivered a record. You came home, and you wait till they called you and said, okay, you're a star, hit the road. That was it. You had nothing to do with your own success. Now, artists have to be walking, talking brands. So you have to be more than just an act.
Play the internet.
Yeah, you have to be, you have to be a CEO. You have to be a manager. You have to. And it's hard, because some kids are probably great artists, but they probably suck socially. And let's face it, most of the best artists that have ever lived couldn't say 3 words in person. So that is the drawback of it. But to me, if you look at cats like Mac, you look at cats like Hopsin. I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but Hopsin is insane. This guy, he's a rapper that was signed to Ruthless. Ruthless never put him out. And this guy can rap his ass off. And every one of his videos, 30 million views. and he's just socially connected, and he's making oodles of money and has no boss. I love it.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. What about the people that won't shut the fuck up, like Kanye?
I am a god. I mean, Kanye's doing his thing. You know what I mean? I think he knows he's shaking shit up. The argument with him and Jimmy Kimmel is a little weird to me.
I'm the biggest rock star in the world.
Yeah, that was a little strange to me, but never fuck with a comedian. Nah. I tried to play with Chris Rock, and he fucked me up, man. So don't mess with a comedian, but, Kanye, you have one of those artists in every generation.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is hype and how much of that is he really believe that stuff?
You should ask him. Yeah. Bring him on the show. I couldn't tell you, man.
I'm not important enough.
Yeah, you are. You'd be surprised.
He'd probably say Jason Burns hates black people.
No.
Drop the mic.
Just call him God. There you go.
I'll tweet him tomorrow.
Okay. Dear God. This is what we do in text all the time. So if you guys are sitting there like, they're not even talking about anything. These incoherent things are what we do in text all the time.
It's pretty ridiculous. Okay, so one other thing I kind of wanted to touch on that I think is part of your persona, and I'd like to kind of give you a second to talk about it, is cars, man. You have just this insane love of cars.
I do, man. I'm Miami Vice baby, right? So it's like, Mom, I want to be a drug dealer. No. You want to be the good guy. They got a nice car too, right? So, I've always been a car fan. Even since before I could afford them, I used to get on my bike and ride down to Phil Smart's and look at SLs. And one day Phil Smart invited me in. I was like 14 on my bike, and he brought me in and let me sit in an S-Class. I'm like, shit. And we didn't have phones then, so I couldn't take pictures. I just went back and lied about it. That's what they thought. I sat in S-Class, right. So I've always had a love for them, and I messed up a lot of royalties early on. Like, I'll give you an example of some dumb shit. Here's something for you youngsters out here never to do. My first check I got, it was like pretty decent sized check for a kid that was like 24, 25. I go all the way to Florida, I buy a new 560 SEL, and I take it across the street to this guy named Herb, who used to trick out drug dealers' cars. And I said, paint this bitch candy apple red with a gold grill, and I want a two-tone interior with some mink carpet. I just fucked it all up, right? I got home, man. My dad made me park the car across the street. And I had a Cadillac with this big-ass grill and all that, and I had both my cars sitting across the street. He said, come here, son. He said, look across there and squint. So I was squinting. He said, you see the Caddy? I said, yeah. He said, what does it look like? I said, it looks like a Caddy. He said, then why in the fuck do you have a Rolls Royce grill on it, right? I learned you can't buy class, so I kind of evolved and fell in love with exotics, and I finally got to do something I've been wanting to do from day one in my career. In 2010, I shot this video called Cars. Didn't even try to sell the music or anything. I always wanted to get it out of my system. We rented 2 of those red cameras and had some helicopters, and we had a strip. And all my friends, there are no rented cars. There's like 200 exotics, all local. And we had everything. I mean, probably about 50 Ferraris and 60 Lamborghinis and Porsche Carrera C, just shit everywhere, man. And it was pretty irresponsible and fun.
My favorite line from that song is when you talk about drive it, and I'll respect it, for people.
Yeah, because a lot of rappers, man, what was I gotta be right here? Beep. A lot of them own cars.
Yeah.
And don't even know how to drive the motherfuckers, right? They're taking deliveries like, can you put that shit in the garage while I talk shit? Yeah, so this is my motherfucking, yeah, but you can't park it. So yeah, I did kind of attack posers because I'm not, because that gives it a bad name. It's not about having more money than somebody else. That's not what it's about. It's just I have a passion for cars. I don't give that muscle cars the same way. You get a guy that loves muscle cars, he's serious about his shit. And I love that stuff. Passion for anything, I'm into that.
Let's talk about actually making music.
I would like to talk about making music, the process of making music from Mr. Mix-a-Lot's perspective.
Okay, bring your iced tea up.
Come on, iced tea. Wait, no. Is there some kind of there's some kind of joke there? So Mix-a-Lot
think
drinking an
that's
iced
tea.
tea. Yeah. With ice cubes
I'm
in
from the
it.
South, man. I know iced tea.
So you are pretty comfortable in the studio at this point.
Yeah, always have been actually.
And you have seen a transition gear-wise from when you first started recording. When could you approximate when your first recording session ever was?
My first recording session was in damn, I'm finna show my age.
A few years ago.
1984.
Okay.
Steve Lawson Studios,
Oh, okay.
and I worked with Terry Date.
Wow,
And,
that was way before he was.
Yeah, Terry Date was like the late night guy, right? So
Wow, that's crazy. Terry's a great guy.
yeah, he's awesome, and
Yeah, he's super cool.
Had to give me my first bit of bad news in my youth, in that you really suck, and you should go home and understand more about making music, because I thought the studio was a place you just went to, as rappers like to say, vibe.
Okay.
But vibing at $150 an hour on a $200 tape on someone else's money wasn't cool. So he basically stopped the session and did not charge me.
So
Said to do it again.
So back in those days, technology certain was not conducive for making it easier for anybody, which is the appeal, and is probably responsible for a lot of the records that we all enjoy, because as soon as you hear that tape rolling, you have to give it 100% or you go home.
Yeah, that was back when you actually had to rehearse a take.
Sure.
For those of you that don't know what that means, I mean, you actually had to rehearse takes. You actually had to get it right. And that was where I was kind of screwed up. I never even heard myself on a real microphone with headphones before that day. So,
Really?
Yeah, I was like, what the hell is this? This is odd. And then I heard compression on my voice. I'm like, wow, I sound good. So I talked to myself for like 20 minutes, you know?
Hang on.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Wow.
Like every time the tape rewound, I like the way the tape sounds rewinding. Compression is cool. So then I overused compression for the next 6 months.
So do you remember some of the gear that was used back in the day when you were recording on a Studer tape machine and just a standard console?
We had, I think they were MCIs, those old MCI 2-inch. And I ended up buying the same two that I started recording. I was 2 16 tracks. So
Wow.
a lot of tracks on a big ass head, and I had 2 of them that I kind of bought and put together. And man, I remember every time you go into a session, they had to roll these drawers out and take these little tools and adjust stuff in a line. I'm like, God damn, man.
Yeah.
But back then you were used to it, right? I remember cussing a lot on songs, and I remember people from the label going, oh man, because they knew that the guy had to take a piece of chalk and mark it and then bring it back on the block and cut it and flip the cuss word backwards. It was a headache back then.
So some of the gear, could you tell us what some of the key pieces of gear in the studio have changed from then till now, and how those make it easier for you?
For me, I'm glad you said for me.
For you.
Because, I remember, I had those big 2-inch machines, and I produced what, in my opinion, still is some horrible sounding shit. It hit. It sold, but it was sparse because I was doing it by myself. I wasn't a musician. I was more of a magician, but I didn't have magic tools, right? So
Certainly.
then I remember Mike Smith, who worked at American Music back then, called me out and said, you got to see this thing. It's called Sound Tools. I'm like, Sound Tools?
Wow,
What's that? All right, this is pre-Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And I bought this Sound Tools editing suite, and I took 2 tracks in it, and I would cut my cuss words out and flip all this stuff around. Like, this is what I always wanted, right? Who needs anything more? Then Pro Tools came out, and I went completely nuts.
You forgot waiting to render.
I forgot what.
Sound tools is wait to render.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you do all your stuff and then hit click, and then you go grab a burger or something.
I remember my uncle calling it slow tools.
Yeah, but I didn't think it was slow then. It was a lot faster than chalk.
Certainly.
Chalk and razors, right? So I thought it was really cool. And then I got Pro Tools, I believe, 2.
Okay.
And it was like, I think I had 8 tracks or 16 tracks, but it wasn't in the box. So people would say, digital sounds like shit. Yeah, but when you went through that mixer, it just warmed it right back up, right? So I was happy with that. And then when everything went in the box, which is just after 3,
Yeah.
that's when it all became hard for me again, because I lost something in the digital domain that I wanted to get back, and I couldn't figure out where it went.
So you figured that out recently. Why don't you tell us how you did that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because people said, well, tape. But I didn't want to go back to tape. I mean, I left tape for a reason. Although I love it, I left it for a reason because of the music I do. So one day I was just trying to figure out what was wrong because I had like 2 years of shitty mixes. I was like, something was missing in the mid-range and in space. I couldn't get things to, I could pan something back and forth and it didn't seem to move. And a buddy of mine said, dude, try this. It's going to be the stupidest thing you've ever heard, but try it. He said, get your old shitty Behringer mixer, right? I had old shitty Behringer. I took 16 tracks and I went out and went through that and back in and everything warmed up. I'm like, with a Behringer? Well, shit, let me go get a real mixer. So I started getting mixers, and I have mixers under I have a D control up top and then I have analog mixers down low, and all I do is run stuff through and back in because it picks up something. I don't know if somebody told me it's the square wave of digital changing to a sine wave and then back. I don't know what it is, but I do know that it works. And I don't diss analog because I don't know where this battle came from.
There is a huge battle.
I'm an analog guy and I hate digital. I'm a digital guy and I hate analog. They're all tools, and we're supposed to make cool songs. So use both if it makes you sound better.
Which is what it's about. It's the song.
That's really what the thing I end up in the end of the day, because we end up with this constantly getting emails about guitars, guitar sounds, and
Yeah.
we use real amps. I mean, I have shit tons of tube amps, and I have Axe Effects, and I have Guitar Rig and GTR and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, it's a mix, right?
Yeah, when I'm recording A-Ron and those guys, I track him direct and I track his amp. Whatever one sounds best in that song, I use it, or both. It just depends on what works,
Right.
man. And I don't get into all this, it has to be on tape. Well, if it sounds better here, then why not use it here? Next song might sound good on tape. And I think analog has changed for me because analog used to be the necessity, but it's become more of a tool to make things sound a little better. But it's not something I use all the time.
So you were talking right before the show about the virtual tape stuff. Do you still think that you need to run out through like the distressors and back?
Yes. I love the Slate digital stuff.
Yeah, me too.
But there's still, like you can see, you can put an analyzer up, a spectrum analyzer, and you can look, and you can run a kick drum, say through Slate Digital, and I always see it looks like a little harmonic stuff. Some frequencies are added, seems like below everything, right? So if you're resonant at 50 hertz, there's something going on at 40. You can see it, and I think that's the warmth that we think we're hearing. But when you run out and grab real analog and come back, there's no change on your analyzer, but you can hear it. You can definitely hear a nice warmth. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what the juju is, but I love it.
Any chance it's placebo kind of in your head?
No, man. When I bought those distressors, it was like, shit. Because I was kind of the opposite. I thought, this is not my problem. And I bought those distressors and I ran through them like, damn, that was my issue, especially when you're tracking rock.
Sure.
Anything with a live band, to me, if analog is nowhere in the loop and you're recording a real band, you're gonna have issues, guaranteed.
So you said you run everything out into analog in the back end. Are there situations where you don't feel like you have to do that? Or is that a
definitely.
must?
No,
Okay.
definitely. When you're doing hip hop, the thing I love about producing hip hop, same thing with EDM, is that you don't have these rules. If you don't do that, I'm not going to retrack here. All that bullshit doesn't happen. In hip hop, there's sometimes the way you track, the way you record, you're going through the mixer anyway, right? Sometimes just a gain stage. I've even come out of.
Will make all the difference?
Yeah, I come out of an MPC or something, right? MPC, you think that's a piece of shit. I mean, as far as the amplification coming out of it, but that little gain stage warms up my signal enough to where I don't have to go out. And it happens I record out of sight stuff, and his drums always were sounding rich and thick, and mine sounded thin, and I was trying to figure out why, and I'm like, the only difference was he had a gain stage. I didn't. I was using battery within the computer, so I didn't have that gain stage. I didn't have that analog gain stage.
You could get a fatter drummer.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, his drummer was 100
Your
pounds
drummer's
heavier
too
than me.
thin. Get a fatter drummer.
So we had a question. I asked some of the guys on the channel for questions, and I got one that I thought was really interesting, and then kind of came up with a really interesting follow-up too. So the question was, back in more like the Mac Daddy, big bass was a huge deal. So the question was, how did you go about getting that huge bass? But before you answer that, when I was driving here thinking about that, I was thinking about the whole loudness wars and compression. Could you even get that kind of bass now with the dynamic range that's in music today?
You can get more of it now, but the problem is hip hop has fallen into the same thing that metal has fallen into, is that we're over compressing, right? And with hip hop, first of all, that is one reason that's the main reason I left tape. At least in those days, maybe it's changed now, but the older tape machines, you track a long decayed 808, it will always make this one noise. Boom, always. Everybody's ever recorded hip hop on a long decay 808 always does that. Never fails.
Wash out the tail, huh?
Yeah, it always boom, and you can't get rid of it. So you had the Beastie Boys. What they would do is they would mask it with another 808, right? So boom, 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 boom. They wouldn't let it decay all the way out the whole song, right?
That's interesting.
And so you had to mask that. So digital got rid of that, but then it gave us another problem. The vocals sounded like fucking cymbals. Right? Everything was raspy and ashy. So, back then all I did was I went digital. Sometimes I'd go digital on my 808 and track some of my stuff and sync Pro Tools to tape. I used to do that a lot. I'd run a Sympty-Tone from tape, take my drum machine and track the 808 in Pro Tools, and I'd lock the two systems together to get the accurate 808. But now,
That's interesting.
I can get things with an 808 now. I couldn't have an 808 last 15 minutes. I mean, just one, and it's clean as hell. But when you start compressing it, it's all screwed up.
I think his next single should be an 808
For 15 minutes.
for 15 minutes.
Don't get me started.
It'll be called 15808, I guess.
I thought about doing an 808 bass song and just calling it, because it's a mix-a-lot song, I call it Hum Job. You think I'm bullshitting? I'm not lying.
I texted him a picture of an 8-string guitar the other night. He's super curious about.
We're gonna have to come over and show you the Axe Effects, the Kemper, the 8-string,
Yeah, Out of Sight has a guy that plays 7-string. I remember going, the fuck do we need a bass for? That shit was boom, 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 boom. I'm like, damn.
Even more so now.
I love that shit, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
See, it's kind of weird, like, the brothers were digging metal when metal and rap kind of mixed a little bit, not because the guys couldn't rap worth a shit. So it wasn't really the rap. It was just that, to me, the songs had more dynamic. It's like speed metal, we can't even understand that shit. When I say we, I mean cats that like rap, because we don't really get it. But when shit stops and it breathes and it has dynamics, that's when you see the brothers' heads start going, oh shit.
But you're into
That
Korn.
white boy got some shit banging over here. You know what I mean? I used to go see Disturbed and Korn and all those cats.
So you were a huge fan of back in the day, the original crossover, the Bring the Noise, Public Enemy, and Anthrax.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
So
that's
good.
Public Enemy, Anthrax. I mean, even the Run DMC. We were talking about Run DMC coming
And
down here.
Aerosmith, yes.
And from a rapper's perspective, Out of Sight and I were talking. Without Run DMC, you would have never seen us on television.
No.
I mean, in Run DMC, let's face it, they repaired Aerosmith's career.
Yes, they did.
I mean, they were pretty much done. So I love when genres get together. I hate purists, and you'll find that out about it. Just be honest. I don't like purists at all. I think they fuck up whatever they do. They may do one thing great, but they're not good for the growth of whatever that is. I don't care if it's sports, music. People that tell a kid who may be very talented at editing in Pro Tools and may make really cool songs, and you tell them, you're doing it all wrong, son. You ain't shit. You have to stick to this. And to me, you're limiting that kid's creativity.
I think that's the part that I really struggle with the Sound City thing. It was this, it's got to be all analog. It's got to be through this classic console. And the funny thing I thought was
They told Hendrix not to use distortion.
Yeah. I thought the
How'd that work
concession
out?
they made for Trent Reznor was really funny. Oh, but he uses it creatively, so it's okay.
Right. And don't get me wrong, you get purists on the digital side who are just as ignorant. I don't like it either way. I think it's not fair to, especially, there's a different generation of engineers coming about, and people say they're not real engineers because they didn't do what we did. But maybe they're not good for old ass music, right? But maybe for today, they're perfect. I argued with a buddy of mine about the sound of dubstep for like 3 hours one day, and I said, dude, I love it. That shit sounds like a bad haircut. I'm like, I love that shit, man. I love it because
That's interesting.
dubstep to me was the first time I ever heard an artist use a synthesizer for the way it should have been intended.
Right.
I don't want an analog synth to sound like a real piano. I use a real piano, right?
Right.
I think dubstep was beautiful.
A bad
I loved it.
haircut.
Yeah.
Bad haircut to me sounds like an old lady asking me awkward questions while cutting my hair.
And some of the sounds are like that.
That's true. A bad haircut.
Yeah.
So
good.
tell us about the Tool remix you did, because you told me you were a little nervous about that one.
Yeah, I was nervous, man. Rick Rubin, I was on his label for years, and he has pull.
Yes, he does.
So I get a call from Mark Didia, who's Rick's right-hand man, or one of them. And Mark says, you know who Maynard is? I'm like, yeah. So he wants you to remix something for one of his bands. I'm like, oh, shit.
Really?
Right, yeah. So this is his band Pussifer, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they give me the song. So then I look at all of Pussifer's videos on YouTube that have been remixed. And oh my God, the fans are like, what is this shit? Punk ass dance music remix? I'm like, oh man, you want me to do this? So I'm like, how can I keep the integrity of the band but then make it a remix? So what I did is I didn't do dance stuff. I didn't do, four on the floor, boring shit with corny chords. I said, I'm gonna make this thing angry. And I made the song Angry, and I used a lot of synthetic stuff combined with, I took a Superior drummer, and I created some real drum sounding stuff with their actual kit. And then I applied stutter to the real kit, and the Superior drummer became the main drum line, right? So they loved it. They had no idea what the fuck I did. It's just, we don't know what the fuck you did. We love this stuff. So for Maynard to tell you that you did something cool, that was, and it was of all the remixes, I think people like that one the most. So that's cool.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool. So I want to get to the panel before we run out of time, but we've been working on a contest for the last few weeks, and we finally got everything together. And the thing that I thought would be really cool for you to kind of elaborate on a little bit is, you told me a little bit about what your starting rig was with a little 4-track and kind of fucking around with that stuff. And we're giving away pretty much a full home digital recording setup for this remix contest. What would have that have been like for you as a kid? I mean,
man, let me tell you. First of all, let me tell you how I got my first 4-track. You know the company that makes those jet skis? I think they're called Polaris or whatever. Mm-hmm. I guess it was the same company. They made a 4-track.
Really?
And I went into I don't want to say what store. You'll see why in a minute. But I saw it sitting there, and I was with a buddy of mine. I'm not gonna say his name. And I was like, that's what we need right here. We could do some music. I got 4 tracks. And it was a cassette deck, and it moved at, was it 3 3/4 speed? I don't know what the fuck the speed is. Double the speed. So I don't know, 1 7/8. Anyway, he had a briefcase, and he said, "Hey man, hold on a second. I left something in the store." He comes back out, no big deal, And what happened was that Polaris was in a briefcase.
Oh wow, free 99.
So he stole it, and we started doing music. And I felt so bad that when I made money, I went back. And I didn't tell him I stole it. I just went back, and we spent a lot of money at that store because I felt like shit. I'm like, dude, that's bad juju, right? So I made sure I did that. And so anyway, but fast forwarding to your question, the stuff that I still feel like, how many tracks is this unit?
32?
Oh man, please. You give me 32 tracks of anything right now, I can make music. I mean, you can't work with that. You should shoot yourself in the head and give up.
Is that your official advice?
Yeah, that's my advice.
That escalated
If you cannot
quickly.
use this,
That escalated quite quickly.
Yeah, that's very clear.
yeah, you have to be honest with these kids.
No, so we we've been kind of bouncing around the track, and we came up with this. Mix came up with this track called "No Never Mind" from Out of Sight.
From Out of Sight, yeah, it's a song called "No Never Mind," and I mean it is
Good track.
a cool track. And I called him up; he was totally with it. And so what I did is I made some stems because my crazy ass was going to give somebody the whole session. And he said, how many tracks? I said, it's about 42. He said, that ain't going to work. So we had to submix some stuff, and I think it's like 9.
Here you go, kids. 42 tracks.
Yeah. Get started with your 32-track system.
Jazz, classical, rap, and metal. This is going to be good. Okay. First question, and I'll just ask the question, and we can just go down the line. We start with Aaron. Analog versus digital. What do you think?
There's benefit to both. I mean, I was born in '86, so I did not. There's a switch on it.
Switch.
I was born in 1986, so by the time I got into recording, Pro Tools was kind of the game a bit. So
Sure.
I haven't spent a lot of time really at all recording directly to tape. So that said, I appreciate good conversion and good outboard pre's and EQs and all those things. So I'm somewhere in the middle, but I definitely record straight to Pro Tools. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer really. Depends on what you do with the tools.
Fair enough. Mix.
Ditto for me. I have no rules. Whatever sounds great, that's what I go
Just
with.
go with it.
I mean,
Okay.
but I like to introduce analog at some point in everything I do.
Okay. I agree with that. David?
I kind of come from the class of giving your client what they want. My clients more often than not want tape and analog.
They do.
We do use digital, or we don't tell them that we did. That was a perfect take. But more often than not, I think just because of the genre of what I'm doing, I do tend to stick more analog.
Interesting. Have you had clients come in that are in the jazz world specifically asking for digital ever? Does that ever happen?
Oh yeah, it does. The last couple of things I've done, I'm a big Logic user on my own,
Cool.
but it's that thing of going, well, I use this. Well, yeah, but I've always done this for 30, 40 years, so.
Okay. That was actually really good. Wow. I'm impressed. I thought there was going to be an argument or a brawl possibly.
You expected worse?
Well, just, if you say that, if I ask that question online right now, it would be a nightmare. Next question, your listening environment when you're working in, anywhere really, home or in an actual studio, how important is your listening environment?
It's very important. I mean, it's real hard to mix an environment that you don't understand the room, and anywhere you're unfamiliar with. It's even a pair of speakers you trust, the room still colors the sound in a certain way. So I have a pair of headphones, Sony headphones that I lug around everywhere with me. I don't think they even sound the way they should anymore when I first bought them, but there's certain things that I can just pick up on instantly with them. So, I always have some kind of helpful reference point to check on. So,
And they are the most beat up headphones I've ever seen in my life. He brings them over, and I'm like, what are you going to do with those things? And you get great results out of them.
Yeah, they work for me.
They do. Mix?
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes people say, well, I heard this great room, and I can go in that room, and it may sound great to him, but I can't mix there.
Right.
I think when you work in a room over and over and over again, you become used to its imperfections, and you can mix based on it. I can mix, and I built my room just recently because I bought a new home, and I had a 50-foot pool, and I took it all out, and I put a studio in there, and I still need some ceiling treatment in my room, but I would go to my car, and I'm like, this doesn't sound right. And I did it for almost a month. And now I can mix to the imperfections in that room. So
You have learned it.
listen environment is very important, but you got to be a hell of an engineer to go from one room to another and still get great results.
I've often wondered.
I don't have that ear.
David, you've worked in just a lot of different environments. How do you overcome different listening environments?
Yeah, I kind of bounce around quite a bit. I think I've been in every place in town other than your place, which we were talking about, which I'll have to frequent. I have carried around the same pair of old Tannoy System 10s
Okay.
for probably 18 years.
Wow, really?
They're beat to hell, and they have their flaws, but like you were saying with the rooms, I'm used to them.
Okay.
There's certain places in town that I've tracked at that I sure as hell can't mix at. And other guys can. I've heard great mixes come out of some of the rooms. But,
Do you know how to handle a microphone?
well, hold on. So what I was thinking was,
Now you're doing some shit.
there we go. But no, the big thing is that is the difficult thing of trying to track something. And what's frustrating is even with me lugging around my speakers and my amps and whatnot, is this going to reflect what I need it to when it actually comes time to mix? Or if I'm passing a mix on to somebody else, nothing's more embarrassing than tracking something and going, well, I didn't know it did that.
Interesting.
So,
Okay. What is the new role of the producer in the new world of immediate music and multimedia stuff versus how maybe they used to be or what people think they should be?
I think, well, it depends if you're talking like a larger, are you talking just the entire industry, or my own experiences with...
Your own experience on what people's expectations coming in, maybe they differ from what, maybe they're talking more of like an engineering role.
I don't know. I feel like, especially with the age of digital and, Superior 2.0 and Pod Farm plugins and all that stuff, those are all great tools that have their place. But more and more, I'm finding, especially local metal bands who they haven't really experienced real recordings. They haven't had careers off the ground yet. They come in and they kind of think like, oh, we don't even want to record a real kit. We don't want to spend the $500 it might cost to use a studio for one day. Program sounds pretty good, and then it's the same with guitar tones. And so a lot of times I'm trying to convey to someone why they shouldn't think that way, and I don't know. It's not the funnest thing, but I don't know. I at the same time, when people hear my body of work and stuff, I don't know. I'm able to turn opinions on. I'm able to turn people's opinions in my favor typically, but more often than not, I'm trying to convince people to up their game a bit, I would say.
Okay. Mix?
Anybody's ever done hip hop knows that a producer does way too much shit. I'm serious, man. I mean, a producer in hip hop is, you program all the tracks, program the beats, everything. You track everything. You track the vocals. You edit everything in tools, and you spit it out and do your best to master it. Seriously. I mean, that's what a producer does in hip hop, because hip hop is not all in the box, but it's all mechanical. It's all done with drum machines and this and that. So you're primarily doing everything. You're tracking, editing, mixing. I've learned, don't try to master, because you're too close to it by that time.
Right.
So you just give it a little bit of compression. Don't squeeze the shit out of it. Drop your 2-track and send it to somebody with better ears. But I remember the first time I worked with I got to witness a band being produced in LA at Westlake Studios, and the producer walks in. I don't know who he was. And he literally sat there. He didn't do anything, but the man had fucking ears.
Really?
I mean, he was hearing stuff that everybody in the room couldn't hear. And I realized it's a totally different role.
Interesting. Okay. Good answer. David?
I guess it would kind of depend on what the role of the producer is. You were talking about how different it is in hip hop. In the jazz world, it's completely different. Metal world, I'm sure it's completely different. It's how much control can the band give you to assist them.
Okay.
With some producers, I think, depending on who it is, it's how much can they decide that you are supposed to be like whatever vision they have. But then it also depends on how the producer works. I mean, there's guys like Rick Rubin we were talking about earlier, who he's got a vision, he's got a style, and you kind of need to fit into that because it's for your best interest, and
Sure.
it's what it is. Then there's other guys who are really good at being almost empathetic to what you're trying to do and convey what you want best. So there's all different kind of roles to wear. I do think modern producers are trying to turn a lot of people into things that they think that they want to hear, as opposed to
I would
what
agree.
they should per se be. Where is your creative elevation going to get you to?
And would you, in live music versus studio music, would you say that's where we see some of the differences, where you buy a band's record and it is completely different from their live show? Do you think that's a result of?
I think that's going to get into our debate later on about analog versus digital.
Okay.
No, I think it's. I think a lot of bands don't really have per se an exact direction, or they may have had one and the producer has a great idea, so they followed it. I think some bands, on the other hand, don't really know what the hell they want to do.
Yeah.
And somebody's leading them down a path. I think it's kind of hard to pigeonhole exactly what it is. But personally, I've always felt that having a producer or an engineer with a mouth, as long as it's respectful, isn't a bad thing, because it's somebody else, another pair of ears, going, hey, I'm hearing this. This part's a hook. We didn't know that. Well, it actually is. But then again, that could always be abused and tacky.
I totally agree. Do you have any favorite producers or engineers that you really dig?
Probably Andy Sneap from the UK would be my number one metal guy. I remember before I even really got into recording, some of my favorite albums were mixed by him, and before I even realized who he was, by the time I started looking back through all these albums, like, oh wow, this guy's name is on a lot of records I like. So him, there's another guy, Jens Bogren, works out of Sweden. He's a favorite of mine. I feel like he just keeps getting better and better. Just gets huge sounds, and yeah, probably those two guys are my top. I could rack my brain to come up with more, but those are the two.
Okay. Mix.
Yeah, for me, it's like I'm a fan of some engineers I see, but not necessarily a fan of what I hear them do. And, Dave Pensada, people like that, I love listening to them, but I've never heard a mix and went, holy shit, Dave.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for me, being a rap artist, you really listen to the producer. And the producer to us, remember, is a guy that makes the track, as opposed to just a guy that engineers our tracks. Pharrell, to me, is the shit. I mean, I love Pharrell.
He's good.
I love Timbaland, only because Timbaland had when he came out with Aaliyah's track, I remember we were on tour and driving through Louisiana, and this, everything in hip hop before that was really predictable.
I agree.
Give me your chorus on the one, boom, catch, boom, 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 catch. That's all it was. And he had this sporadic kind of a thing where the snares were all off, and it was boom, boom, cat, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, boom, boom, cat-a-that. But there was something rhythmic,
Right.
No hi-hats, right? He never had hi-hats, and these weird sporadic on and off kind of tracks that stopped and started, and was something about that weird dynamic that made him my favorite producer, really.
What is he doing nowadays, I wonder? I don't...
Jay-Z.
Is he? I didn't know that.
He's on that record, yeah.
One of his... I always thought he did a really good job on Justin Timberlake's first record.
Yeah, he did. He really did.
That was awesome.
Yeah. And he does stuff sometimes that you wouldn't think he did.
Okay.
He's all over. Like when I heard "Sexy Back," I'm like, nah, because it was boom, boom, boom. He usually doesn't do that.
Right.
And it sounded really cool. So he's probably my favorite. Him and Pharrell.
Okay. David.
I was just enjoying the beatboxing.
I know he says he can't beatbox.
Yeah, we're not doing that today.
He can actually
but,
beatbox.
We just did.
That's how we speak in the studio.
Oh, yeah.
Yo, dude, can you give me a boom, boom, scat? Okay, I got you. No problem.
Not
It's a
touch.
language.
I want to hear you do some Aphex Twin or something later.
Yeah, right. No problem.
Let's see. For me, Pascal Gabriel is probably the guy that really got me into doing stuff. He started off doing classical. I think it was like '92. He did a Peter Murphy record.
Oh, wow.
And I remember listening to that album. I was younger, and I remember listening to that album, going, "Shit, everything is where it should be." And it was that production of where I honestly, because doing this for a living, you can't help but listen to an album. You can appreciate what it is, but there's plenty of times where you listen to it and you go, I might have done this, or I might have done that. Or I don't know, maybe I just do that. I don't know. Do you do that?
I do it all the time.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
wonder if I'm wrong.
But that was one of those albums when I listened to that album where I seriously sat there and just like, I wouldn't change a damn thing. I loved every tone about everything. I loved where everything was. It was something that I actually strived to kind of get to that point. On the other hand, you got me into Linkin Park years ago. I wasn't listening to it, and you were telling me a story about it. I'm like, oh, I'll go buy the album. And I don't remember what album it was, but I listened to it and was like, it's catchy, it's good. And then a producer did the next album, and he completely changed the way they did everything. And you were talking about him earlier, and that was remarkable in the sense of, here's a producer who had an idea that basically unsettled everything.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
And that was interesting, But
Yeah,
then
because
again,
usually a producer does that can get in trouble.
Right.
Because they're not capturing the essence of what the band is,
That's
but maybe
ballsy.
he saw something that nobody else saw.
But you have like guys like Flood and guys like
Yeah.
Daniel Lavoie and whatnot, where they don't come in and go, well, this is how you sound, and we'll just play with that. They force you to reinvent the wheel.
They screw with you.
Yeah. Which, when I was younger, I was completely against because, when you're 25, you can be self-righteous and have an opinion like that. But as I got older, it's definitely one of those things of certain bands need that. Certain bands on their own could be iconic.
Interesting. Well, actually, that leads me into my next question, which was, do you have any specific albums that you actually think are, for all intents and purposes, perfect, sonically speaking? Like where the mix, you were just saying, the mix is right where it should be. I can hear everything. Wow. Like something that really blows your hair back. Is there one album that just really blows your hair back?
I don't know. I kind of feel like my tastes change over time.
Okay.
There's certain aspects of recording that I get really fixated on for a little while, like wow, guitars, and then for a little while it could be something else. So I remember like 2004, Killswitch Engage, The End of Heartache, when that came out. I loved the drums, everything. It just gels. It has like a nice saturation to it, and that was kind of my, probably my number one mix for a period of time. I don't know. I'll just get that. That'd be my answer, I guess.
Okay.
For me, it's really hard to use rap when you talk about this because there's not enough going on to
Okay,
really
fair
challenge
enough.
an engineer. But for me, it would have been Parliament's album Motor Booty Affair. Just when I listen to Aqua Boogie, and it's like 100,000 things going on, and everything had a spot, and I could hear it. Without headphones, you could hear all these weird things going on, but it was musical. And that album too, I could listen to it from start to finish, still to this day.
That's cool. And do you still stick with the Peter Murphy record?
Yeah, that's one of them up there. There's a couple other ones. I know it's cliche, but there's a couple Radiohead albums that I can't help but listen to and just go, okay, well, shit. Yeah, okay, right.
My whole life is invalid. Oh, I do that a lot.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, it's not just their ballady stuff. I mean, but there's just, I think Goodrich, their producer, does a really good job of doing what is tasteful. He kind of reminds me of a modern version of what it was like to do, if you were to take a Beatles album with Martin and do it modern day. And I'm not comparing the Beatles with Radiohead.
Right.
But I'm just saying the fact that here's somebody who actually puts everything in its right place, sonically and tone-wise. And I ripped off one of their songs, but we're not going to comment on that.
Shh. Shh. Okay. Will analog always be around in 50 years from now? Will analog always have a place somewhere?
I think it will, but at the rate computers are improving,
It'll get smaller and smaller.
Yeah. I don't know. There's always going to be people who want it for nostalgic reasons, but honestly, I could see computers getting to a point where there's actually no sonic benefit of analog existing, but people just hanging on to it because it's cool, or I don't know.
My worry is the people. At some point, there is not going to be anyone who knows how to work a tape machine. At some point, there might be. Like, I don't know. I hope there's not. But no, I don't.
See, for me, I think sometimes we tend to lose sight of who we're trying to sell music to. And I think
True.
what's going to happen is that the consumer, most of the consumers nowadays have never heard tape. And as that continues to happen,
Yeah, I think that's true.
it's not will analog be necessary or not necessary. I mean, well, it won't be necessary, but it will still be a vital part of most systems. I don't know about 50 years from now, probably not, but I'm saying I think that, and this is something I had to really teach myself in order to evolve in the studio, is that we're not mixing for engineers. We're not mixing for audiophiles.
Who was
in
your
the
audience?
70s, they mixed for audiophile. That was some hard shit to mix. My brother was an audiophile. I mean, he would sit there and sit between two speakers and just shh, and he was listening to everything, every detail of music. That doesn't happen anymore. People are nodding their heads and stomping their feet, and these kids are growing up in a digital era.
Right.
And they're comfortable with that sound, and I had to teach myself that, okay, I got to make that kid happy. It's not just about me anymore.
It still has to sound good through a pair of 99-cent
Right.
iPod headphones.
Some earbuds, right.
Ironic.
But right now, you can take a kid, and this is real talk, you can take a kid right now and play him a song and play that same song and add that analog bump, and he won't say what it is he notices, but watch him. His head will start to,
He'll notice it. Yeah.
because there's something about that thump and that pulsating feel of analog stuff that gives things energy.
Well, I guess I'm going to be the outcaster on this one. I think I use digital because it's convenient, but given the choice, if I had to pick one side or the other, and this is probably going to lead to a later discussion, which we were talking about earlier, I'm more pushing towards analog, not because it's a nostalgic or an esoteric or an elitist thing.
Okay.
There are mechanically things that it does that no matter what no matter what converters try to do or plugins, they can't capture it. And it's not a thing of going, well, I use 2-inch and you use Pro Tools and mine sounds better. There's certain amounts of high roll-off. There's certain amounts of just internal compression. There's all these things that happen. And it's funny because we were having a talk earlier about how there's converters at 44 versus 192 and so forth. And our 192 converters getting closer to what a tape machine can do. It's not the per se perceived amount of samples that it can grab to be equal to what tape does. There's other things that tape does. But I think that if you're doing certain genres of music, they are going to be applicable to digital. If you're doing certain genres of music, they're going to be applicable to tape. And I think the big difference is tape has some very severe restrictions of what it makes you do.
Well, and that drives creativity in a lot of cases. I started recording in '95, and we were mixing and recording everything on tape with a huge Neve, and that forced us to make decisions in the studio right there and not go, well, we'll worry about it later in post, and we'll splice this together.
Well, if we go back even further to like when we were kids, we talked about this earlier, we both started on, he had the Polaris, and I had the de facto Tascam 4-track tape machine.
Okay.
And when we were kids, you had 4 tracks, so you would do whatever you're going to do and bounce it down and just keep doing this repetitive, at the time, I don't think we knew or we didn't really give a shit about it, but it got noisier, but we didn't care. But you had to commit to a track, and there's something about the big thing with digital that drives me up the wall is just, it's so cliche now. Well, you can edit that. I can dub that or whatever. And yeah, you could punch on tape, but there's something about committing to a track, committing to a performance, and that's the big thing for me. And again, it goes back to the genre of music, the stuff that I'm doing. I'm not trying to capture a take, and I'm not trying to capture, okay, well, you did really good, now let's just track another one and I'll edit it and we'll comp this together and all of a sudden you'll have that. I'm trying to capture a performance. Can you do from beginning to end something that's going to move me when it's done? Not something that's going to be defined by a click track and everybody else can play to that later and it's going to be perfect.
Yeah,
perfect isn't best.
I totally agree with that. There are some serious setbacks to digital that I've noticed is that it makes musicians lazy. It really does.
Totally agree with that.
They start to go, well, you know what? I played that rhythm part off, but just, fire up Elastic Audio, slide that shit in position, we'll be good. And they go drink a beer.
So could a band, so when I think bouncing down and making decisions and committing to things, I think of a Queen record. Would those kinds of records be possible now if you had all of the options and all of the background vocals just split up and, we'll worry about that next set? I mean, because that had to drive their creativity.
Those songs cannot be done by bands that aren't good. I don't care if it's Pro Tools or tape. They have to be good first. And that I think we all agree on.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about the different things that drive us as recording, and one of the things that I'll probably get flamed for, I think there's a lot of bands that record nowadays that don't deserve to be recorded. And I don't mean that, it sounds really arrogant when I say that.
It's true.
But it's this whole thing of like going, cool, great. So
Out of Sight told him he had to say that.
I said it wasn't, I'm getting stuck with it. But no, it's this thing of like, I've honestly seen kids come in and they track and they go, that was a good measure. And then they will copy and paste that 45 times.
Oh my God.
And then all of a sudden, hey, look, you've got Bieber. But it's this thing of like...
Oh, man.
You paid me to say that. But it's this thing of like going, now, if you listen to...
David Taylor. Just, no.
Yeah.
But
his email is...
No, if you sit and listen to like Queen, for example, I got to sit and listen to one of the sessions once. And it's an incredibly remarkable thing to sit and listen to this session without anything, just here are the tracks, and it's flawed. It's flawed all to hell.
Absolutely.
But it's not a bad thing. No. There's character in the way that his voice goes a little flat on this note, and there's character where the guitarist noticed that, so he made sure on the next measure he went a little flat to compensate, so the whole thing dropped 5 semitones to compensate for the key. Yep. And it's one of those things of like, here is a masterful band to watch work. I remember watching a documentary on a really famous band, and they talked about how the singer will be in moods and he'll be pissy tonight, so we know that we have to drop it down to a different key because he won't tell us. And he'll walk on stage and sing, and all of a sudden everybody around is going, shit, he's in B. And they'll all adjust.
I remember going to the EMP when they had the P-Funk ride or whatever it was, and you're sitting there and you're watching P-Funk legends in the studio. And I was like thinking to myself, I wish I could record some people that could really play. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have to do much. I'd be able to enjoy the music and, like you're saying, track something that's going to move me, and all I have to do is mix.
And you can lay on the couch like Rick Rubin.
Exactly. There you go. I can lay there and pull my beard and go, yeah.
I do not like that.
I don't like
dig
that
that
snare.
shit.
What's wrong with it? I just don't like it.
I just don't like it. I think...
I was going to say, I'm sorry. On the same note, I don't think that is genre specific. I don't think that.
I agree with that.
I'm not going to sit up here and be the jazz snob and be like, well, you know, in the jazz world. No, bullshit. There's plenty of people who are doing, you know, rock, hard rock, metal, hip hop, who have the ability, but I think sometimes digital empowers these people to be, God forbid I say it, but lazy. It's like you could do a better take.
Right.
You could go home and practice for a couple hours before you come into the studio. Be warmed up when you get here, and lay down a tape that makes me sit there and smile, as opposed to going,
right.
It's okay, I can fix that with auto-tune.
Good enough.
Yeah, and what you have now is you have a bunch of artists who show up, and they're really not cohesive, and they know they're tracking in tools. They know what tools is, right? They tracking it. You clean it up. You fix it. You give it back to them. Then they go rehearse it.
Right.
And it's kind of backwards. It's like the tail's wagging a dog now.
I would rehearse with my band the first time we went and recorded with the guys with Seaweed, with Clinton West. Seaweed's a local band. We rehearsed for 2 weeks, 8 hours every single day in preparation for that record, because there was just, you know, you're spending a lot of time and money and someone else's time and money to go and do that. So why not be on your A game?
Well, how often does the studio become hangout time or become something that is not?
Too often.
You know, okay, somebody somewhere is spending money on this, but the entitlement gets you away from that.
Right.
And all
Especially
of a sudden,
in hip hop.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that? Shit sounds good,
It's
dog.
good.
You know, that's the feedback you get.
Yeah. And then you got the engineer going, really, you like that? Jesus, okay. Well,
The engineer's high as hell, like, it's the shit.
I haven't spoken anything, but yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but it's not hip hop. I did a studio that I worked at. I had this like grindcore metal band come in, and they brought in Tupperware. And there was this Tupperware container for hot dogs. I remember because I was a kid of the '70s. And here's this Tupperware container about this big, and it was like full of smoke. And these guys come in, and I'm sitting there at the console looking through the glass. And at one point, I turned the lights in the room out there, and I couldn't see shit. And I'm just like, wow, it's clouded. And then, of course, every studio has, of course, you know, the interior, exterior door of every kind of thing. At the airlock, you feel like you're in a spaceship. And these guys opened the door, and they didn't bother to close the damn thing. And they opened the other one. They come in. We're talking about something. And 5 minutes later, I realize I can't tell the difference between this room and that room. And everything sounds purple. Don't get the engineer high. He can't do shit when he's high.
In your recordings,
Unless,
sound that great either.
I don't know. Do you smoke when you?
He's vibing.
I don't.
At any rate, we have to go, guys. We are out of time. I would like to thank all of you for being a part of this sweet discussion. We'll do it again over beers and off camera, I'm sure.
I just want to record it.
So at any rate, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.